Hey, what's going on YouTube? Son of Sanguinius here, and in this video I was going to give my brief opinions on some of the rules changes that have been sort of tossed around at Adepticon this year for 8th edition. I'm going to warn you guys that I'm not going off of any script or anything this time. Normally I at least have like a couple bullet points, but in this video I'm basically just going to record my thoughts as we go along. So this will be kind of rambly. I do apologize if that's not your way to play. But currently I'm looking at the Warhammer community page. The specific article is called Warhammer 40,000 News from Adepticon. So I scroll down or whatever, and it's some guy named Pete or whatever, going on about some stuff. But I'm just going to go through these one by one, toss around some ideas, and we'll just take it from there. So the first thing that they mention is 3 ways to play. It says, the General's Handbook has been one of the most popular rule supplements we've ever released. Who would have thought letting people choose how they wanted to play their games and giving them a clear way to do that would be so popular? It's pretty clear from talking to a number of event organizers that Warhammer 40,000 would benefit from the same approach. Soon we'll be introducing the same 3 ways to play, open, narrative, and match play, to the 41st millennium. So, my thoughts on this. Okay, it's. I guess it's kind of nice to see that GW is at least taking what was good from AOS and implementing some of that here. I can tell you that in like pickup games, I don't really feel like I deviate too far from having points costs simply because I want the I tend to like my games to be fair. But that's cool. It's okay. I really don't have too much opinion to say on that one way or another. I'll look forward to it, I suppose. Next thing is army selection. One of the things that comes up a lot is the idea that people should be rewarded for taking thematic armies. It's a sentiment we agree with, and so we're looking at introducing command points, a mechanism to reward players who structure their army like their in-world counterparts with rerolls and cool army-specific rules throughout the game. Okay, so we're already like in the second, little blurb here, and I already have a couple problems with this. As far as, the idea of, being rewarded for taking thematic armies, that wouldn't be so much of a problem, GW, if you actually made an effort to balance the stuff that you put out. And, okay, so you're going to give us some rerolls. Okay, how many rerolls? What are we going to be able to reroll? Is it just, like, saves? Are we talking about ballista skill, weapon skill? What are we talking about here? And frankly, as far as rerolls versus special rules go, they're going to have to be quite a few rerolls to sort of balance out any kind of power gap that are left, or that is left between an army that has been sprinkled with pixie dust and an army that has not been. As far as like cool army specific rules go, don't we already have this in, say, formations and detachments? I'm not really seeing any kind of deviation from what's already been done. They talk about they keep on going on about thematic armies, but we already have that with unit specific formations, and we kind of already have that with the detachment of formation, the carry-on style of detachments that have sort of taken hold of 7th edition in its current state. So I'm not really quite sure what they're talking about here, considering we already have that. I'm guessing what they're saying is that they want to try and reward people for not cheesing out their system, which, okay, again, maybe you should try and balance it instead of letting us re-roll some dice. I don't know. Perhaps I'm being a little bit too pessimistic here, but I'm not entirely convinced by their idea of army selection here. It just sounds like more of the same, honestly. Because if it's not a detachment, if it's not a formation, okay, then what is it? It sounds like it's going to be more of the same. So. Anyway, moving on. Next little blurb here, we have movement. It says, we think the move value should come back. No more default unit types. every model should have cool bespoke rules. Not only would that be more fun, but it'll mean you will only need to learn the rules for your models. So this is, I think the movement set it will actually be a good thing. I think it'll be interesting to see how it just sort of plays out, because obviously some armies are more faster than others. It'll be interesting. As far as they kind of mention that, oh well, you only need to learn the rules for your models. Well, that kind of already goes without saying, but it also if every unit in the game has special rules unto itself, that kind of just means that there's a whole bunch of crap or whatever that you're going to have to know, especially when you go up against your opponent. And what do I mean by that? Well, if every unit has its own special rules, then how do you know that your opponent isn't pulling a fast one? And do they know, what they're really talking about? Because you wouldn't know. Unlike universal special rules, where everyone can, reference the same things, where, everything is listed under a keyword. If every card has its own thing, then, every time you go up against, a new unit on the tabletop, then you're going to say, oh, hey, can I see, that in your codex? Or can I see that on your data, your data slate or whatever? Which is funny, because as much as people like to rail against universal special rules, they actually work quite well as far as having sort of like a common pool in which all players can sort of dive in and understand what something means by a simple keyword. Another game that does this, it's not a war game, but it is a card game, Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering does this excellently. As far as being able to just understand what something does with a simple keyword, that's great. I think the thing that I think that people don't necessarily have a problem with universal special rules. I think it's mainly just the amount of universal special rules that can be a little bit overwhelming. But I digress. Getting back on topic here with the movement phase, I think the movement value. I think it'll be interesting. Let's seeing, for example, Plague Marines moving kind of slower than regular Marines. Who knows? Perhaps Blood Angels will be able to move a little bit faster or something. Who knows? Although I'm skeptical, but we'll get on to that. So I think movement value would be great. Instead of everyone moving 6 inches, now you have a little bit more variety. Guardsmen might move 5. Space Marines might move 5 or 6. Eldar might move 6, something like that. A little bit of variety in there. So now we move on to shooting, and specifically armor save modifiers. Now I'm probably going to have to talk about this quite a bit, so just prepare yourselves. So shooting. It says armor save modifiers. This topic comes up almost as often as Sisters of Battle, so we're looking to bring them back. Every weapon will have its place in your army and better represent how you imagine them working in your head. So do I think that this is a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I feel like we have to kind of break this down and see how it will affect our army. So, AP system versus armor save modifiers. Well, with the AP system, what it means is there's basically a barrier that you can't do diddly squat against unless you completely break through that barrier. So, for example, if you have a Marine, 3-up armor save, doesn't matter if it's AP 6, 5, or 4, or nothing, he will always have that 3-up armor save. As soon as you hit AP 3 or 2, though, then he's screwed. He just loses his armor save. What that means is, for the most part, you can kind of, sort of charge out your Space Marines and still have a decent shot at, saving your Marines from, shooting or, the assault or whatever. Basically, your armor save is guaranteed, and it will never change unless some specific circumstances arise, such as, a low AP weapon like AP 3 or 2, as mentioned here, or suppose there's some weird psychic shenanigans or some weird special rule that just so happens to come up, right? However, with this new armor save modifying system, what it'll mean is, okay, so you have your Marine, and he's got, 3-up. Let's say, let's just call it AM, armor modifier, and let's say it'll range from armor modifier of 0, which would be, it doesn't affect the armor save at all, to -1, which is, armor save, -1, -2, and then -3. Reason why I say it would probably cut off at -3 is because once you go past that, you're kind of breaking some things. So, for example, what this will also mean is that for like armor save modifiers, there probably won't be any definitive, cover save, armor save, or invulnerable save. What this does is it will kind of roll everything together into one saving throw. So, for example, they may still call it an armor save, but that will probably be all that we'll have. If you're in cover, that gives you a +1 to your save. If you're out of cover and the guy has a armor modifier -1 on his weapon, he shoots you. All right, so you -1 to your armor save, something like that. And the reason why I say it would probably cut off at -3 is because if you take a Terminator, for example, you look at something like an AP2, anything like an AP2 weapon versus a Terminator, that would result in, okay, their 2-up armor save is negated, but they still have a 5-up invulnerable save. Okay, so how would we translate that? How would we combine all these rolls into one? Well, suppose a last cannon has a armor save modifier of -3. That'll take the armor save of a Terminator from a 2 to a 5. Which is that would make it effectively the same thing, as if it had a 2-up armor and a 5-up invuln. Instead, its armor save gets modified from a 2-up to a 5-up. So, in that sense, I can see this really working. It's nice that, that way, we don't have to, constantly go through, cover versus armor versus invulnerable saves. However, here's the problem, because as soon as we start talking about armor save modifiers, we have to start talking about weapons. Now, remember how I said there was, at least with the AP system, a wall that could never be broken, and that would constantly have to be, it would basically have to be broken. It can't be chipped away. You have to, break through that barrier of that AP before you can affect someone's armor save. Granted, this is ignoring, psychic shenanigans and whatnot. But you want to get past an armor save of 3, you have to have AP 3 or lower, right? The problem with this is, okay, so they say each weapon in your army is going to have, this sort of armor save modifier. Okay, this is a game changer. This means that, say, let's say you're going up against other Marines. Well, if you're going up against other Marines, the basic bolt gun will reduce your armor save to a 4-up. A 4-up. You go from a 3-up to a 4-up. That's huge. That's huge, because before, what we really had to worry about was, plasma. We had to worry about, power swords, power axes, that kind of stuff. We had to worry about, meltas, last cannons, that kind of thing. We had to worry about, the big stuff. Basically, the only way to take out a Space Marine reliably was to, fire, anti-armor weapons at them, right? This changes that, though. And it'll be curious, I'm very curious to see how GW is going to do that, because, okay, so let's, we kind of have to come up with some sort of a line, some sort of a guide to apply. Okay, well, from transitioning from an AP system to an armor modifying system, which weapon, will get which value? Well, for me, I like to start at the most powerful, and we'll just sort of work our way to the weaker ones, right? Okay, so let's say AP2 weapons, no matter what they are going to have an armor save modifier of -3. So, for, Marines, let's say, tactical Marine, power armor, 3-up armor save, -3. Well, we've kind of segued into, something that we'll touch on later, which is, are saves actually going to be completely negatable through the armor modifying system, or is there going to be a definitive, you can't go lower than 6-up? We'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping that armor saves can be negated, because if it doesn't, then it means that a lot of the Horde armies are going to really benefit from it. And more elite-ish armies like Space Marines, Blood Angels, Chaos, that kind of thing, are really going to be nerfed in that sense, but I'll touch upon that a little bit later. So, Terminator, for example, 2-up armor save, armor modifier -3. Okay, that brings them down to a 5-up. Tactical Marine brings them to a 6-up, right? Okay, well, what's AP2? So, Thunderhammer, Power Fist, Last Cannon. We can touch on AP1 too, so like Inferno pistols, multi-meltas, that kind of thing. Okay, armor save modifier of -3 makes sense. Okay, so that's AP1 and AP2 would be the equivalent, would translate into armor save modifier -3. Okay, so what about AP3 weapons then? Well, the next step would be -2, right? So what's AP3? Power swords, power mauls, power lances on the charge. Okay, okay. Well, we can kind of work with that there. But since we did AP2 and AP1, wouldn't that also mean we have to do AP3 and AP4? Because keep in mind, a heavy bolter, AP4, is more powerful than a bolt gun at AP5. So shouldn't a heavy bolter be more powerful than a bolter? Sure, Heavy bolter should have, a higher, armor save modifier, ideally, than a regular bolt gun. Okay. But then, if we include AP4 weapons with AP3 weapons, translating them into armor save modifiers, well now, is a heavy bolter as powerful as a power sword? Is it? I don't know. What this will mean is, okay, so, heavy flamers and heavy bolters will be as powerful as power swords and power mauls, they're going to have the same armor modifier, which in this case would be -2. But that brings up another question, looking at power mauls and power swords. If they both have the same armor modifier, then how are they going to balance a power sword versus a power maul? Because keep in mind, a power maul, at least right now, is still +2 strength. So, okay, where's the balance then? Why wouldn't you always go with the power maul if they both have the same armor modifier? So already, as we dive into this, we can see that there is some definitive problems as far as balancing the weapons goes within this framework. And I don't know if they're going to increase the points cost of certain weapons, or if they're just going to, leave them be, and I guess everyone will just take power mauls instead of power swords. But we'll have to see what GW does with this, because translating them into the system, yes, it's simpler, you could argue, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better, and this will complicate a lot of the choices as far as people make, unless, of course, they just say, oh, well, all power weapons are this. And frankly, I don't know that I want that. I want there to be, a diversity of weapons. If my guy has a different weapon than you, that should have, some sort of different effect on the battlefield, and of course, and that's what we like, and this kind of touches into, them dumbing down, the game, so on and so forth. We'll touch on that at the end of this, but already with this armor modifying system, there are some definitive problems that you can see in this example that I just gave. Now, moving on from that, okay, so let's assume that they, maybe they increase the points cost of power mauls versus power swords, whatever, they do this, that, and the other thing. Okay, so we covered AP2 and AP1, okay, translating that to -3. AP3 and AP4, translating that into -2. So now we move on to AP5. AP5, AP6, and then nothing, right? Okay, well, AP5. So already I'm thinking bolt gun. Should probably be -1, right? Of course it should. -1. Okay. AP6. Last gun? Is a last gun, as powerful as a bolt gun? Now, I could be wrong here. I thought last guns were AP6. I will have to check on this, actually. This is what you get, ladies and gentlemen, when Son of Sanguinius goes on his rambles, and he doesn't have the thing in front of him to look at. So, give me a second here. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh gosh, I'm sorry guys. You'll have to bear with me here. I have it buried in here somewhere. But anyway, so comparing a bolt gun to, say a last gun or whatever, AP5 and AP6, if we're sticking with our current theme, already we have some problems here. And I'm just about to pull up the codex for Astra Militarum. Hang on a second. Alright, let's see. We're going to go to reference. Come on now. Reference. Alrighty. I do apologize for this, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's not the best thing ever. Alright, last gun. Okay. Last gun is AP nothing. Okay. Clarified that. Clarified. So, going back to, AP5, AP6, AP nothing, is AP6, anything that's AP6, right? Assuming we're including it in this category, you have to ask yourself, okay, is it as powerful as a bolt gun, considering a bolt gun is AP5? And if we're transitioning from an AP system, into here, we can establish that, okay, a bolt gun at AP5 would translate into armor save modifier -1, right? Okay, well, then anything that's AP6, is it as powerful as a bolt gun? Is it truly deserving of that -1 modifier? Because keep in mind, if they're going to be fighting against Marines, would power armor really, crimple, a little bit? Would it, be damaged necessarily against anything that's AP6? And again, we run into these problems. So, just looking at the Imperial Guard Codex here, for example, a frag missile from a missile launcher is AP6, right? Is that, powerful? Is that powerful enough, to sort of, crimple power armor? I don't think it is. So, in my mind, for an armor modifying system, what I see is, and this, this is up for, conjecture, debate, whatever. It's just my personal opinion here. AP1, AP2, modifier -3. AP3, AP4, modifier -2. AP5 by itself -1. AP6 and AP nothing -0. So no modifier at all. So that's just kind of how I see it in my head. Again, we'll have to wait and see what they're going to do with this. But the other thing about this sort of armor modifying system is this means that shooting is essentially more powerful. And what I mean by that is armies that have a lot of shooting, even the most basic weaponry of a Space Marine will be able to affect your armor save. This is a detriment to assault armies because instead of having to, essentially break through an armor value with an AP, now, potentially even the basic rifle, of, any infantry unit can affect our armor save negatively. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to be constantly jumping into dangerous terrain, with my jump axe, or, having to try and, position myself in such a certain way, unless, to the point where, if I don't, my armor save, gets nerfed. And I don't know. It's, on one hand, I can see it being good, I can see it being useful, but only if armor save modifiers can be completely negated. Because, say I'm going up against orc boys, right? I want my bolt guns to be able to just chew through them. I want to be able to just gun them down, assuming that they're just, basic 6-up armor. I want to be able to negate their save. Because, a bolt gun thematically is powerful enough to do that. And thematically, it makes no sense that, everyone should just, have a fallback on a 6-up, save, no matter what. I don't like that idea. It gives an advantage to horde-type armies that I don't think is necessarily deserving. It means that, cheaper, more plentiful units essentially have an advantage, because if you can always rely on your 6-up, why would you ever bother with, more elite, more expensive units with a higher save, if those saves can basically just be negated to where the points that you put in for that unit doesn't really, you don't get your reward for the points that you're putting in for that save anyway. I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. I'm kind of torn on this. I'm not quite sure that it's necessarily going to be implemented well, but we'll have to see. So the next thing, moving on. Sorry, this video is going to be quite long already. Combat phase, right? So this is what it says. Charging units should fight first. It's just more thematic. We're hoping to work this out well. It will reward tactically outmaneuvering your opponent. You can dictate the combats rather than being entirely initiative-based. You control who swings first. So, okay. You might think that I would be in favor of this, but in actuality, I'm not. for a couple of reasons. The first one that just sort of poked out to me was, okay, well, if initiative isn't going to play a factor in this, then already the new edition hasn't even come out yet, and already GW has just nerfed Blood Angels because initiative was kind of a big thing for us as far as the Red Thirst is concerned. So now the Red Thirst has essentially just been negated, and it means nothing anymore. So thanks, Games Workshop. Really appreciate that. But moreover, this kind of opens up the idea of being countercharged by shooting armies, and I don't think that you can convince me, even if Guardsmen were to charge Space Marines, I don't think you could convince me that Guardsmen should swing first. I've heard some arguments, out there on YouTube that, oh, well, if I am, charging you, I should, swing first. Well, yeah, are you faster though? Initiative is not supposed to determine, who charge who first. It's supposed to determine, the swiftness or the fastness of a unit. And the common argument is, okay, well, if a horde of orc boys, charge, a guardsman liner or whatever, then they should swing first. Well, okay. You may have it with something like guardsmen, but what about space marines? Do you really think an orc is faster than a space marine? I don't think they are. And what about, say, Emperor's Children? Are you faster than Emperor's Children? Really? Marcos Anesh, +1 initiative, that sort of, being swift and quick. Are you faster than Eldar? Orc players? I don't think you are. And I can see the argument where, it kind of sucks for them because they've made the charge and, the other guy gets the hit first, but I kind of see that balancing out with, the additional attack, coming in, but, be that as it may. We'll have to see how this plays out. I think I don't know if they're going to remove initiative entirely. If they are going to remove initiative entirely, I think I'd probably like that less. If it's just that whoever charges first gets to attack first, regardless of initiative, and after the charge and during the first round, it then goes to initiative. I think that would probably be the better of the two options. And they also talk about, you dictate the combats rather than being entirely initiative-based. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that, because if charging units go first, then it's already being dictated. You control who swings first is what it says. Well, no, we don't. If, whoever makes the charge goes first, according to this thing. So it's not as though we have more freedom. It's just changing who gets to go first, in this, in the combat order there. So, I'm skeptical. Again, we'll have to see what it means. My biggest fear is just this sort of incentivizes more shooting armies to charge, to essentially countercharge us and sort of take the punch out of the salty armies anyway, which I don't really like the idea of, because the initiative system was kind of an incentive that you shouldn't charge. Let's say you have an Imperial Guardsman gun line, right? Say some, you got your 10-man unit of Imperial Guardsmen, then you have, 5-man unit of Assault Marines or whatever. They land, say they deep strike, whatever. They land in front of you, they shoot at you, okay, let's say you lose one or two guys, alright, you manage to pull off your cover saves, whatever. The initiative system was a good incentive not to have shooting armies essentially countercharge, and sort of take the punch out of assault armies, because if they got to hit you first, it was still a bad idea as opposed to just shooting and then going for like something like Overwatch, for example. Now we'll have to see how that sort of plays out. Obviously, I'm not a dice calculator. This is just off the top of my head. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced by the charging unit should go first. I rather like the initiative system, simply because thematically, to me, that makes more sense. An Orc Boy is not faster than an Emperor's Children Chaos Space Marine. I'm sorry. You can try and debate me if you want. I just believe the fluff and the precedent that has been established in previous editions kind of says otherwise regarding that topic. So, the last thing here is morale. It's no longer all or nothing, and it affects everyone. We're thinking of replacing break tests with a simple mechanic. Roll a d6, add that to the number of models your unit has lost this turn, subtract your leadership, and take that many additional casualties. So, okay. I know that, and they show no fear kind of gets a bad rap, as far as, the various armies go. It's been, called and they show no rules and this kind of thing. Part of me can understand that, but I want people to understand what this means, because this means that all you will need to do to incite, higher casualties among Marines at its worst is you're going to have to kill 3 Marines in order to cause, an additional, Marine to die, right? That may sound like, oh, well, it's balanced, but combine this with the armor save modifying system that's going to be coming up with, in 8th edition. We can assume that, depending on who you're going up against, the most basic weapons will be able to, diminish your armor save. You take into account that with this new mechanic, and they show no fear may not even, be a thing in 8th edition. Killing 3 Marines isn't that difficult to do now. Killing 3 Marines, as it's been presented to us in 8th edition, in 8th edition, as it's been presented to us here in this article, will be even easier. So I'm cautious, because this means that Marines are essentially going to be easier to kill, and I think that one could argue that for Space Marines in particular, as an army, that may be deserving, but I don't think that that's deserving for Blood Angels at all. Looking at this morale system. This kind of, I get that the extra casualties that you get with this morale system are supposed to determine that, oh, well, they're running from battle. When the hell do Space Marines run from battle? When do Chaos Space Marines run from battle? When the hell do Death Company run from battle? I'm hoping that Fearless at least makes a return in some way, shape, or form. I'm hoping that they, if they got rid of And They Show No Fear, that's one thing, but if they get rid of, Fearless, I would have a big problem with that. Death Company do not run from battle. Sanguinary Guard do not run from battle. I would argue that Chaos Space Marines should probably just be Fearless built in. In my personal opinion, but regardless, I don't know. I'm skeptical with much of this here. The only thing that I've really seen that I could be in agreement with 100% would probably be the movement stat, depending on what they do. The 3 ways to play is okay, whatever. Army selection, again, if you balance out your armies in the first place, GW, this wouldn't be a problem. Shooting, I'm skeptical. We'll have to see how they handle the weapons. If they follow the template that I laid out, or if they follow a different template, we'll have to see, how this really works. That combined with morale and the new combat phase, again, I don't know if that, I don't know if this will necessarily help, assault the armies. I don't know. We'll have to see. My answer for shooting is no. That weakens us. The movement thing could help us, depending on how they dish out movement. Shooting, no. Combat phase, well, I guess that depends on who you're talking about. For orc players, I'm sure that they're jumping up and down. I'm not so much, because the Red Thirst just got completely destroyed with this. It's now meaningless. And I like being able to hit first regardless, but I guess GW has some other ideas about that. And then morale, we'll have to see how they implement it, because as I've stated, it would only take killing 3 Marines to kill a 4th one with the system, and killing 3 Marines is not difficult now. And assuming that they stick to this template that they've laid out here in this article, it won't be hard in 8th edition. It'll probably be easier. So, my general thoughts, I'm kind of concerned. We'll have to see how they implement these, because basically what I'm reading is Marines, if I had to summarize this article in a nutshell, Marines will be easier to kill more than ever, and by extension that means Blood Angels will be easier to kill more than ever, and that annoys me, because I don't think that we are deserving of that nerf. But again, as I keep saying, we'll have to see what they do in the upcoming edition. So anyway, I understand that this video has been incredibly long. Like I said, guys, this has just been a ramble. I haven't had time to put together like a script or anything. But I'm very curious to hear your guys' opinion on this article. If I have time, I'll leave a link down in the description below. Thank you so much for giving me your time, listening to my, thoughts, opinions, rambles, hatred, pessimism, whatever. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.